Beneath the Crown, The Prince's Manhood Struggle. Chapter 1, The Silent Curse. The village of Ezehani, nestled in the heart of the Enugu community in Nigeria, was a place of ancient traditions and deep-rooted customs. It was a village where the royal family was revered, and the people held their king in high regard. The palace, with its grand structure and sprawling courtyards, stood as a symbol of power and stability. But within its walls, a dark secret threatened to unravel the very fabric of the royal lineage. Prince Obinna, the only son of King Eze, was a handsome and strong young man, beloved by the villagers for his kindness and humility. But despite his outward appearance, Obinna carried a heavy burden, one that brought him immense shame and pain. His manhood, the very symbol of his royal lineage, had been cursed. No matter how much he desired it, his body would not respond, leaving him unable to fulfill his duties as a man. This curse had been placed upon him by his stepmother, Queen Eze, the second wife of King Eze. Eze was a woman of unparalleled beauty, but her heart was filled with envy and bitterness. She had always resented Queen Ngozi, the king's first wife and Obinna's mother, for her status and the love she received from the king and the villagers. Queen Ngozi was a woman of grace and compassion, adored by all who knew her, which only fueled Eze's hatred. The roots of this hatred went deep. Queen Eze had been unable to bear children, and in her desperation, she accused Queen Ngozi of poisoning her, rendering her barren. The king dismissed these accusations, but Eze was determined to exact her revenge. She sought the help of a powerful witch doctor who prepared a potion with a dark curse, a curse that would strike at the heart of Queen Ngozi by destroying her son's ability to produce an heir. The potion was hidden in the prince's food, and from that day forward, Obinna's manhood ceased to function. Princesses from neighboring villages were betrothed to him, but each one left in frustration and disappointment when they discovered that the prince could not fulfill his marital duties. The whispers began to spread through the village, and soon Prince Obinna's shame became the talk of Ezehani. The once proud and noble prince now walked with his head bowed, the weight of his curse crushing his spirit. His mother, Queen Ngozi, was heartbroken. She knew that something was terribly wrong, but could not fathom what had caused her son's affliction. She prayed fervently to the gods, offering sacrifices and seeking divine intervention, but her pleas seemed to go unanswered. The king, too, was troubled, but he could not understand why his son, the heir to the throne, had been struck with such a misfortune. As the years passed, the curse tightened its grip on the prince and hope began to fade. But fate had a different plan, one that would soon bring a glimmer of light into the darkened world of Prince Obinna. Chapter 2, A Glimmer of Hope. The palace was a bustling place, filled with servants and maids who tended to the needs of the royal family. Among them was a young girl named Amara, an orphan from a neighboring village who had recently been brought to the palace to serve Queen Ngozi. Amara was different from the other maids. She was quiet, respectful, and incredibly hardworking. Her eyes, though often downcast, held a depth that spoke of wisdom beyond her years. Amara had come to the palace with little more than the clothes on her back, but she carried within her a legacy that no one knew. She was the daughter of the late King Chima of the neighboring village, a man known for his healing abilities and deep knowledge of natural medicine. King Chima had been killed in a jealous rage by his brother, who coveted the throne and feared his brother's power. Amara had been just a child when her father was murdered, but she had already begun to learn the secrets of his healing practices. Though Amara kept her past hidden, she never forgot the lessons her father had taught her. She knew the power of herbs, roots, and plants, and she used this knowledge to help those around her in small, unnoticed ways. It was her way of honoring her father's memory, even as she lived in obscurity as a maid. It wasn't long before Amara caught the attention of Prince Obinna. She was unlike the other maids. Her presence was calming, and she carried herself with a quiet dignity that intrigued him. Despite his deep sorrow and shame, Obinna found himself drawn to her. She never pried or asked questions about his condition, but her kindness and unwavering loyalty provided him with a sense of peace he had not felt in years. As their bond grew, Obinna began to confide in Amara, telling her the story of his struggles. He spoke of the princesses who had left him, the whispers that haunted him, and the curse that had turned his life into a living nightmare. Amara listened with compassion, her heart aching for the prince who had been so cruelly wronged. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of Obinna's chambers, Amara spoke up. "My prince," she began softly, "I do not know if my words will bring you comfort, but I believe that there is a way to lift this curse. My father was a healer, and he taught me much about the power of nature. Perhaps there is a remedy that could help you." Obinna looked at her with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You think you can help me?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "I can try," Amara replied, her voice steady. "But it will take time, and it must remain our secret. If anyone were to find out—" "I understand," Obinna said, nodding. "I trust you, Amara. Do whatever you think is necessary." And so Amara began to prepare special herbal mixtures for the prince, carefully selecting ingredients known for their healing properties. She brewed teas and prepared meals infused with these herbs, all the while praying that the gods would bless her efforts. As the weeks passed, Obinna began to feel a change, a small, subtle shift that gave him hope. He didn't dare speak of it to anyone, not even to Amara, but deep within, he felt a stirring that he hadn't felt in years. It was as if the darkness that had gripped him was slowly beginning to lift, replaced by a warmth that spread through his body. Chapter 3: The Prince's Choice. The bond between Prince Obinna and Amara grew stronger with each passing day. She was more than just a maid to him. She had become his confidant, his healer, and, though unspoken, his closest companion. The once shy and reserved prince found himself looking forward to their conversations, their quiet moments together, and the simple comfort of her presence. Amara, too, had developed deep feelings for the prince. She admired his strength, his resilience, and the kindness that he showed despite the suffering he endured. She had seen him at his lowest, and now she was witnessing his gradual healing. It filled her with a sense of purpose, knowing that she was playing a part in his recovery. But with these feelings came a growing sense of fear. Amara knew that her position in the palace was precarious. She was an orphan, a mere servant, and though the prince treated her with respect, she was keenly aware of the social divide that separated them. She could never allow herself to dream of more, no matter how much her heart longed for it. Obinna, however, was not bound by such fears. He knew what he wanted, and as his health continued to improve, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, Obinna turned to his father, King Eze, with a determined look in his eyes. "Father," he began, his voice steady, "there is something I must tell you." King Eze looked at his son, noticing the resolve in his expression. "What is it, my son?" "I have made a decision," Obinna said. "I have found someone I wish to marry." The king's eyebrows raised in surprise. "You have? Who is she? Obinna hesitated for a moment, then spoke with conviction. Her name is Amara. She is a maid in the palace, but she is so much more than that to me. She has been my healer, my friend, and my savior. I love her, father, and I wish to make her my wife. The king stared at his son, stunned into silence. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. A maid, he finally said, his voice filled with disbelief. Obinna, you are a prince. You are destined to marry a princess, someone of noble birth. How can you even think of marrying a servant? Obinna remained calm, his resolve unshaken. Father, I know that this is not what you expected, but Amara is not just a servant. She is the daughter of a king who was wrongfully killed, leaving her an orphan. She carries within her a legacy of healing and wisdom that has saved my life. I cannot imagine my future without her. The king's expression softened slightly, but he was still troubled. Your mother and I have always wanted what is best for you, Obinna. This is not about Amara's background, but about the expectations of our people. You are the heir to the throne, and your choice of wife will have consequences for our kingdom. Obinna met his father's gaze with determination. I understand that, father, but I believe that the people will come to see Amara for who she truly is. She is a blessing, not just to me, but to our entire family. I love her, and I am asking for your blessing. The king sighed, torn between his love for his son and the weight of tradition. I will speak with your mother, he finally said. But know this, Obinna, this will not be easy. You must be prepared for the challenges that will come with this decision. Obinna nodded, grateful for his father's willingness to consider his request. Thank you, father. That is all I ask. When Queen Ngozi was informed of her son's intentions, she was initially shocked. But as she listened to Obinna's heartfelt explanation, her heart softened. She had always wanted her son to be happy, and if Amara was the one who brought him joy, she could not stand in the way of his happiness. But the path ahead would not be easy. The royal court, the villagers, and most of all, Queen Eze would not accept this union without resistance. The battle had just begun, and it would take every ounce of courage and love for Obinna and Amara to overcome the obstacles in their way. Chapter 4. The Wedding and the Miracle. The announcement of Prince Obinna's decision to marry Amara sent shockwaves through the village of Ezehani. The news spread like wildfire, and the reactions were mixed. Some were intrigued by the prince's choice, while others were scandalized. The royal court, made up of the king's advisors and noble families, was particularly vocal in their opposition. They saw Amara as an unworthy match for the prince, a servant who could never fulfill the role of a queen. Queen Eze, who had always harbored resentment toward Queen Ngozi, was livid. She had hoped that Obinna's affliction would prevent him from ever marrying and producing an heir, thereby securing her own influence within the palace. Now, with the prospect of a wedding, her plans were crumbling before her eyes. But Prince Obinna was undeterred. He stood by his decision, refusing to let the opinions of others sway him. His love for Amara was genuine, and he was determined to make her his wife, no matter the cost. With the support of his parents, the wedding plans moved forward, and soon the day arrived. The wedding was a grand affair, held in the palace courtyard under the gaze of the entire village. The villagers gathered to witness the union, their curiosity piqued by the unusual match. The air was thick with anticipation as the ceremony began, with traditional music and dances filling the space. Amara, dressed in a beautiful gown woven from fine, colorful Nigerian fabrics, looked radiant as she walked down the aisle. Her heart was pounding in her chest, not just from the excitement of the day, but from the weight of what was to come. She knew that her marriage to the prince was more than just a union of love. It was a chance to finally break the curse that had plagued him for so long. As the vows were exchanged, and the prince and Amara were declared husband and wife, the crowd erupted in cheers. But the real miracle was yet to come. That night, as they retired to their chambers, Obinna felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. He had felt the gradual healing over the past months, but he had not allowed himself to fully believe that the curse could be lifted. But as he held Amara in his arms, something extraordinary happened. His manhood, which had been dormant for so long, finally responded. It was as if the curse had been shattered, replaced by the warmth and love he felt for his new wife. The prince was astonished. He had not felt such a surge of life in years, and he could hardly believe that it was real. But as the night went on, it became clear that the curse was truly broken. For the first time in his life, Obinna felt whole, and he knew that it was all because of Amara. Months passed, and the news of Amara's pregnancy spread throughout the palace and the village. The joy was palpable, but there were also whispers of doubt. Some villagers were skeptical, unable to believe that the prince, who had been cursed for so long, could father a child. They wondered if the pregnancy was truly his, or if it was the result of some other man's intervention. But Obinna stood by his wife, defending her honor and their child. He knew the truth, and he would not let the rumors tarnish their happiness. He assured his father and mother that the child was his and that their family's legacy would continue. Meanwhile, Queen Eze was consumed with rage. She could not bear the thought of Amara, the lowly maid, bearing the heir to the throne. Desperate to sabotage the pregnancy, she turned once again to dark magic, seeking out a potion that would cause Amara to lose the child. But fate had other plans. In her haste to administer the poison, Eze made a fatal mistake. The potion, meant for Amara, ended up in her own cup. As she drank it, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach, and within moments she collapsed. On her deathbed, Eze confessed everything: the curse, the poison, and her deep-seated hatred for Queen Eze. With her dying breath, she begged for forgiveness, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and she paid the ultimate price for her wickedness. With Adese's death, the curse was lifted completely, and the dark cloud that had hung over the palace began to dissipate. The villagers, once skeptical, now celebrated the prince's newfound happiness and the impending birth of the royal heir. Chapter 5. A New Beginning. The palace was filled with joy and anticipation as the months passed, and Amara's pregnancy progressed. The once somber and quiet halls now echoed with laughter and excitement as everyone eagerly awaited the arrival of the royal heir. The curse that had plagued Prince Obinna for so long was finally broken, and the future looked brighter than ever. Queen Eze, who had endured so much pain and heartache over the years, was overjoyed to see her son happy and healthy. She had always believed in him, even when others had doubted, and now her faith had been rewarded. She spent her days by Amara's side, offering support and guidance as a young woman prepared to become a mother. King Eze, too, was filled with pride and relief. He had worried for so long about the fate of his kingdom, but now he knew that the royal line would continue. He had come to accept Amara as his daughter-in-law, recognizing the strength and courage she had shown in standing by Obinna. She had proven herself to be not just a worthy wife for the prince, but a true queen in her own right. As the day of the birth approached, the village of Ezehani buzzed with excitement. The people had come to see the prince's marriage as a symbol of hope and renewal, and they eagerly awaited the arrival of the child who would one day lead them. Finally, the day arrived. Amara went into labor, and the palace was thrown into a flurry of activity. The royal midwives, along with Queen Eze and a few trusted servants, attended to her, while the king and prince waited anxiously outside. The hours passed slowly, each one filled with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Obinna paced back and forth, his heart racing with both fear and excitement. He could hardly believe that he was about to become a father, a role he had once thought would be forever denied to him. And then, just as the sun began to set, the cry of a newborn baby filled the air. The sound was like music to Obinna's ears, and he rushed into the room to see his child for the first time. There, cradled in Amara's arms, was a healthy, beautiful baby boy. The prince's heart swelled with love and pride as he gazed down at his son, the heir to the throne of Ezehani. Tears filled his eyes as he realized that the curse was truly behind them and that a new chapter had begun. The news of the birth spread quickly, and soon the entire village was celebrating. The people gathered outside the palace, singing and dancing in the streets, their joy infectious. The royal family stepped out onto the balcony, where Obinna proudly held up his son for all to see. The cheers that erupted from the crowd were deafening, a sign of the people's acceptance and support. But amid the celebrations, there were still those who harbored doubts. The rumors that had plagued the prince before the wedding had not completely disappeared, and some whispered that the child might not be his. But Obinna paid them no mind. He knew the truth, and he would not let the opinions of others taint his happiness. In the weeks that followed, life in the palace returned to a new kind of normal. Amara settled into her role as the queen, and Obinna took on his duties as both a prince and a father. The bond between them grew stronger each day, forged in the fire of the trials they had overcome together. The villagers, too, began to see Amara in a new light. She was no longer just a maid from a neighboring village. She was their queen, a woman who had brought healing and hope to the royal family. Her strength and grace won them over, and soon, even the most skeptical began to speak of her with respect. As for Queen Eze, her name was quickly forgotten. The curse she had placed on Obinna was lifted, and the pain she had caused was slowly erased by the joy of the new life that had come into the world. Her death was seen as a fitting end to a life marked by bitterness and deceit, and few mourned her passing. In the years that followed, the kingdom of Ezehani flourished under the leadership of Prince Obinna and Queen Amara. Their love story became the stuff of legend, a tale of resilience and redemption that inspired generations to come. And as the prince and his queen watched their son grow, they knew that the future was bright, not just for their family, but for the entire kingdom. They had overcome the darkness of the past, and together they would build a new legacy, one filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. Tune in again, dear audience, to witness the captivating tale in this African folktale filled with strength, power, and jealousy from family members. Remember, all is fair in strength and unity, but love conquers all. As you navigate the story, leave us a comment on your thoughts, wishes, assumptions, and conclusions about the story. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from us. See you next time.